Welcome back to the program. We are joined today by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, always great to be with you, Glenn. Thank you.
So you just attended the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, and while the UN created to preserve the peace does not appear to be doing too well as the world is heading toward a very dangerous place. So over the past few days, I've been watching some very strange speeches, many packed with a lot of obvious lies. I heard the threat of war, a strange bromance between the former director of the CIA and a former Al Qaeda leader who now leads Syria. But I thought a good place to start could be Europe because there seems to be an eagerness now to escalate tensions with Russia, likely for the purpose of pulling the US deeper into the war. And there was a great excitement as Trump said that Russia was a paper tiger, Ukraine can win, it can even take Russian territory, and the Europeans should start shooting down Russian jets. Now, of course, this excitement appears to have been replaced with some panic as Trump then suggested that the Europeans should take care of all of the above. But what do you make of all of this in terms of the direction of the Europeans, especially? And yeah, where's this all heading?
Well, first, what Trump did this past week has been given two very different interpretations. Honestly, I'm not sure which is right. Either of them shows a failure of leadership and an irresponsibility. One interpretation is that Trump expressed a new view that, yes, as he's been advised by General Kellogg and other hardliners in the United States and by Zelensky and others, that Ukraine can win, that Russia is being defeated, that the Russian economy is in crisis. These are the things that he said. Normally, when a leader says something so straightforwardly, that's the first interpretation that comes to mind, is that that's a view that he's expressing. The other approach to this, which is the one you also alluded to, is that it's the opposite. In fact, that this was simply a smokescreen of Trump saying to the Europeans, you keep telling me you want to fight, you keep telling me that Russia is winning. Okay, great. Go at it. It's all yours. Just buy my weapons. So these are two different interpretations. I went with the first originally, listening to Trump and hearing his views, and also having the strange and unpleasant experience of standing in the General Assembly hall and seeing General Kellogg mingling among the various delegations. That I found to be rather unpleasant because I don't understand what a hardline American general is doing in the UN General Assembly other than stirring up trouble by the United States. But the second interpretation was the one actually given by many of the European leaders, or at least the media that purport to represent their views. That what Trump really said was, if you want to fight, go ahead. It's all yours. Just buy my weapons. Now, either way, we have a colossal failure of leadership and growing confusion and definitely growing risks of escalation, either deliberate or accidental. What Trump has never done from the beginning of this term is to explain anything to the American people or to the world about the U.S. position vis-a-vis this war in straightforward terms. For example, the most basic question, on what basis can this war be ended? The United States puts forward no positions. The European leaders put forward no positions other than saying Ukraine will determine that, which is an extraordinary idea, essentially saying we will do anything Ukraine says, whether it's in our interest or not, whether it makes sense or not. And of course, when I say what Ukraine says, I mean what one person says, Zelensky, who is at this point a dictator, in effect. He's ruling by martial law, and that is going to determine what Europe and the Western world do. So, to my mind, the great failure of this is that while President Putin has put on the table a very clear set of conditions for peace, he's described them as Ukraine's neutrality and the transfer of specific territories to Russia at the as part of the peace agreement. The other side has said either nothing, or it's said no concessions of any kind, and Ukraine will remain in NATO, which is tantamount to saying, first, no negotiations. Second, the war will continue despite the massive destruction, the bloodshed, the demographic catastrophe facing Ukraine. So all of what I'm saying, Glenn, is that this past week was at best unedifying and at worst, depending on the interpretation, a dramatic escalation that could lead to a direct war between at least Europe and Russia, if not NATO and Russia, in a direct sense of direct clashes and fighting outside of Ukraine into Europe and so on. The European leaders are absolutely without any honest public-facing discussion of these risks right now. We don't hear anything from the triumvirate, Starmer, Macron, and Merz about the risks of World War III, about nuclear war, about the European Union and the UK becoming a battlefield. In fact, none of this is articulated. No choices are stated. No discussion is made. Of course, there is not one moment of truth expressed about the history of the conflict, how it arose, why it arose, how it could be diffused. Not one single word. And this past week at the UN was all the more shocking for this. Trump's speech was an incoherent rant of lies from beginning to end on every possible range of issues, by the way. The discussion, this supposed turnabout by Trump, also unexplained. The puerile insulting of Russia as a paper tiger and so on, walked back after the fact, was absolutely against the service of peace or any kind of solution. In other words, this was a week devoid of grown-up behavior, of responsibility, of any movement towards peace. And we're just talking about Ukraine, because we could talk in the same way about Netanyahu and the war in the Middle East. Every single thing that I've just said applies to Netanyahu's vile and loathsome address that he gave to the General Assembly, which was an address of hate and continued war. So not a good week for diplomacy.
I was thinking that all of this recent dubious claims about Russian infringement of NATO airspace with jets and drones, which they deny, and no evidence has been provided. We also see the accusation now, or not the accusation, but the threat of using now long-range missiles without any limitations against Russia, again, calling for shooting down Russian jets. At the end of the day, irrespective of what Trump's motivations might be or some clever scheme, the Russians, must respond to this in some way. It seems to me that the whole premise that Russia would not respond and accept the idea that this is not that this is simply NATO helping Ukraine defend itself, it ignores, as you suggest, that NATO backed the coup to begin with, that they largely hijacked the intelligence services, the army, and the government in Ukraine. And again, these are NATO weapons, so we're talking about NATO now attacking Russia. You speak with these European leaders. You meet them now at the United Nations. Are they committed or convinced that they're just there to help a country that was invaded without any provocations, or do they, I guess, recognize, as many of the leaders have already done, that this is a proxy war?
The leaders don't engage in real discussion. They do not debate this in public. They don't express their views. And okay, with me, they don't have to, but they don't take on any kind of discussion. One just walked away when I started to make these points. We had an exchange of pleasantries. I expressed the worry about the direction, and I was told that I was barking up the wrong tree. This is not the way that one should behave to keep this world safe. I think what's most worrying for me is the ever-present fear that I have that some accident is going to quickly spiral out of control. What we have are two sides that are, well, especially, I would say, the Western side, yelling hatred towards Russia, an absolutely astounding, vulgar, crass Russophobia. And I call it that because it's not an attempt at an analytical explanation of what's happening. It's completely dishonest from a historical point of view. It glosses over every single fact that led us to this war, but it's hate speech non-stop. And Trump participated in that. And it is with all the claims of these provocations and all the rest, and the open discussion this week about shooting down Russian planes, the kind of blind rage that can lead to an event, that leads to another event, that leads to another event, with these this hatred and this vituperation already stoked. And then because these leaders are able to command missile systems, they don't need to ask their publics for approval, of which the publics absolutely do not approve of what is happening right now. A devastating war could soon befall us. And if this seems just, kind of being afraid of the rhetoric and so forth, how many wars start with an incident, with an insult, with an accidental or false flag event that triggers a spiral rapidly of escalation? A large number. World War I, the war that destroyed every hope for peace for the next century in its way, started, of course, with an assassination by some young kids of the Archduke of the Habsburg Empire. But one can name countless such cases. And this is what we are walking along in this abyss. We're right at the edge of terrible accidents happening without diplomacy, without honesty, without reflection, without maturity, without consistency, without guardrails. And we continue to come closer and closer to the edge.